spectrum, because a spectrum designates a space between 0 and 1, but it tells you the exact definition that you're describing. And because it designates a space between 0 and 1, it designates a space that is neither negative or positive, because it's describing numbers at large. It's describing numbers at infinity is what a spectrum is, instead of at a finite perspective. It's from an infinite perspective, instead of from the perspective that you have measured things every single day of your life in finite instances, like singular tables, or how many cups of coffee, like there's 5 of them, or you have like 20 boxes in your garage. You have one garage, and all these singular definitions that are separated from each other, so you can see the practical advantage they have, and then use in the physical world you can take advantage of the practical function that every single object has, and every single object is created for a distinct function, because the only reason they're created is, or the only reason they're accepted, is because they bring us to a place of greater efficiency, meaning that they specify our capacity, they specify the functions more and more, and so by doing increase our capacity for function. And in increasing our capacity for function, we fill in a lot of spaces between functions that already existed, and then we fill them in more and more specifically until we have filled in our entire capacity for function. But that would then be seeing your entire capacity for function at an infinite level. The more that you filled in all the possible functions that you can make and made every single manifestation of a function, and the more that you made every single manifestation of a function, is the more that you reach infinity as far as functions are concerned. And that would be the same thing as designating a spectrum with a beginning and an end, and then calling it the spectrum of functions if it included infinite manifestations, because the spectrum views the manifestations at large, rather than in that case, the finite perspective of you viewing tables and houses and all these definitions that were created as functions, all these ideas. Besides that, all the words that you say are different ideas that have separate values, and that you can use them to communicate higher levels of truth, and you can use them to be influential. But the important part of it is the space between 0 and 1, and that the space between 0 and 1 is not positive or negative. It's not positive or negative, so that's a really important space to recognize. And that space sits in contrast to finiteness, and that's the space for infiniteness, or numbers at large. But numbers at large, as being able, at least through the spectrum, you get to view the infinite perspective on them. And basically all that we have are the finite perspectives, in which we see the original numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, the things that we count with. We see the bottom level of it, the finite numbers. We see at the level of finiteness, meaning we see at the level of the people that are subjected to the definition, meaning that within the definition humanity, we all see at the level of humans, whereas humanity sees at the level of humanity and sees all humans at large and considers every manifestation of humanity, which is infinite of them. But those two things sit in contrast to each other, and they're the two major perspectives that we have.